Today we're talking about Justice League Unlimited, Season 1, Episode 2, The Man Who Has Everything. Our episode begins with Wonder Woman flying herself and Batman to the Fortress of Solitude for his birthday. Bruce asks Diana what she got Superman for his birthday, although she doesn't tell him because of Superman's super hearing, which would spoil the surprise. Bruce mentions that Superman is a hard guy to shop for, saying, "What do you get the man who has everything?" Admittedly, kind of a weird thing for a billionaire to say, but it's a noteworthy statement. It makes sense for Bruce to be jealous of what Superman has. 2 loving and alive parents, incredible superpowers, and relatedly the ability to save those he loves. Maybe a girlfriend? I don't remember offhand if Superman is dating someone in Justice League Unlimited. Bruce admits he just got him cash, which opens up more questions than it answers. Does Superman even play Clark Kent anymore? From the perspective of this show and its predecessor, Justice League, he seems to be Superman full-time. So if he's never Clark, where does he get money, much less spend it? No time to question Clark's economic status because he's got an alien plant on him, trapping him in a frozen state, like Alaska. Inside Clark's head, he wakes up with a helpful droid assistant version of Brainiac, as opposed to the villain, and an unnamed woman but clear romantic interest in his bed. Multiple signs indicate he's on Krypton, such as Brainiac referring to him as Kal-El, this mystery woman referring to the Quantum Farm, and Brainiac mentioning Kal-El's father is expecting him later. So after a quick trip to the DCAU fandom wiki, apparently this woman is Loanna, a not particularly subtle combination in name and personality of Lois Lane and Alana Lang. It's still weird and not great she's never named on screen, not helped by the fact that in the whole episode there's only 3 women, I believe, 2 of which go unnamed and 1 which doesn't talk. Granted, there's not that many characters at all in this whole episode, but it still seems a bit regressive, understandably so perhaps for a show that came out 22 years ago. Back at the Fortress of Solitude, Bruce has deduced that this alien trap has been sent under the pretense of being a gift for Clark's birthday. I'm not sure how Clark thought a random alien planet grateful for his help would know when his birthday is. As Bruce figures it out, Mongols shows up, holding Wonder Woman unconscious. They banter for a bit. Just kidding, she's not unconscious and they are about to fight, but Bruce intervenes. Mongo correctly figures that Bruce's top priority is getting information about the plant. In typical bad guy fashion, Mongol explains how his trap works and his evil plan. The Black Mercy is a telepathic species. It reads the heart's desires and feeds the individual a totally convincing simulation of it, he says. The plan itself, while not spelled out explicitly, boils down to get Superman out of the picture and then take over the world. There's also a nice touch for Mongol's character when he assumes Clark has an ulterior motive for saving people, wondering if in his dreams he's on a throne having conquered these lesser beings, aka humans. Back in Clark's simulation, he's making pancakes for his son Van-El. They also have Crypto the dog. Crypto has apparently made a mess and Clark wants Van-El to clean it up. Great power, great responsibility, and so on. On one hand, it seems odd for his dream scenario to include his son making a mistake and him disciplining him for it. I mean, I'm sure you'd like to see your kid owning up to their mistakes and trying to rectify it and having a parenting moment, but it still seems like something a picture-perfect dream wouldn't have. Perhaps this is some of the realism the simulation includes to not break the illusion. Mongol fights Wonder Woman and Batman over a series of punching, suplexing, backhanding, and the like. Bruce tries the laser to remove the plant, but the plant is unfazed. He then tries talking to Superman, which feels like a pretty desperate play, given how Bruce already knows that Clark is essentially catatonic. Wonder Woman fights Mongol in the Hall of Weapons, while Bruce keeps trying different tools to get the plant off. Why does Clark even have a Hall of Weapons? Again, Bruce tries talking to him, saying, "She's fighting for her life, you've got to fight too." I'm not sure how he's supposed to fight an enemy he doesn't know exists, but alright then. Clark and Van-El are talking about Clark leaving the big city for the farm, which is either his subconscious seeping in with details of reality, or maybe he really does just want to be a farmer, who knows. Another clue this simulation is getting shaky is the recurring earthquakes that Clark notices and no one else seems to comment upon. Van-El is exploring Jor-El's lab, and one of the plants is the Black Mercy one currently holding Clark in his frozen state, which is a nice detail. Jor-El senses Clark is bothered by something. Clark points out all the seismic activity, and Jor-El dismisses it. Clark says he can feel something wrong. Jor-El mentions that he predicted Krypton exploding right around the time of Clark's birth, and it took years to regain his reputation when it didn't happen. Clark seems to think Jor-El might have been right but just got the timing wrong, or he actually does suspect he's in a simulation. It's not entirely clear. Clark's increasing suspicion appears to be coinciding with Bruce's loosening the plant's grip on him, or at least removing the main part from his chest. Now for the first time, Clark actually hears Bruce in his simulation, just a disembodied voice saying, "Fight it," which is admittedly not very helpful. Clark then gives a heartfelt speech to his son, ending it with, "I don't think you're real," which seems like a real big leap based on the evidence so far. He's felt earthquakes, sensed that there's trouble, and heard a disembodied voice once. I'm not sure how those combined to equal a simulation exactly. Usually in simulation scenarios, the person, alien, computer, whatever running it, makes a few mistakes, getting some details wrong that starts to tip the person stuck in it off. This one has seemed reasonably convincing so far, but Clark apparently has some sort of preternatural ability to figure it out without much to go on. It's implied that because this is everything he's ever wanted in life, that has also partially tipped him off. While ripping the plant off Clark, Bruce gets it attached to himself, and we see the beginning of his dream. It starts as his backstory so often does, walking down Crime Alley with his parents, Joe Chill trying to rob them and then kill them, but this time Thomas Wayne stops the robber and saves everyone's lives. This also felt like a strange dream to me. If I was a grown adult traumatized by the cold-blooded murder of my parents, I feel like my dream would be me as an adult with them still alive. It seems weird to revert to childhood to rewrite the story. The fact that his parents almost got robbed and murdered in his dream is bizarre. Perhaps this is indicative of how deep his trauma goes, that even in a perfect world the crime attempt still exists, but is instead thwarted instead of merely never happening at all. Bruce is smiling in both simulation and real life when his dad beats the heck out of Joe Chill, which doesn't seem like the healthiest emotional association with violence. After awaking from his Black Mercy coma, Superman appears to understand the situation pretty quickly, or at the very least realizes Wonder Woman is in trouble. He swoops in and starts beating up Mongol. It's clear he's ticked, as anyone would be who was put in a perfect simulation and then yanked back to a sober and disappointing reality. If Mongol wasn't so durable, he would have been dead several times over by now, although it's not clear if Superman's actually taking that into account or not, saying, "Do you have any idea what you did to me?" Mongol seems proud of himself and not particularly surprised Superman escapes, even though this ruins his entire two-step plan, saying, "I fashioned a prison that you couldn't leave without sacrificing your heart's desire. It must have been like tearing off your own arm." Wonder Woman crawls out and is struggling to get the plant off of Bruce, which begs the question how the heck Bruce got it off of Clark, lacking her super strength. While doing so, Diana shatters the simulation such that Thomas Wayne dies in it. Meanwhile, Mongol has the upper hand with Superman, is about to snap his neck or crush his head or rip his head off, it's not entirely clear. He says, "Happy birthday, Kryptonian." Again, how does Mongol know when his birthday is? "I give you oblivion," he continues. Then, in a very un-Superman-like moment, Superman says, "Burn," and then lasers the heck out of him. Superman is still ticked and yelling about what he's lost. Some falling rocks and conveniently placed statues remind him that good still exists in this world, and he probably shouldn't just murder this guy out of anger. Mongol takes advantage of his hesitation and turns the fight around. He beats up Superman, who uses his super sense of smell to smell what the rock is cooking, but just before he gets crushed by a rock which wouldn't kill him, so I don't know why as an audience member I'm supposed to be worried. You'll never guess who shows up. Also, it's pretty hard to make an intimidating evil speech when your face is so beat up one of your eyes is 2 inches above the other one and you're missing teeth. Diana plays the Uno reverse card and throws the plant onto Mongol. We finally learn what Diana's gift was, which was a new breed of rose called the Krypton, although it's pretty smushed. I do wonder what Wonder Woman's simulation would have been like. In terms of what I like about this episode, it's that there are actual stakes, which is particularly rare for a nearly invincible person like Superman. Seeing as he's someone, generally speaking, you can't hurt physically, it makes sense that one way they can put him in a vulnerable position is to attack his mind. For a show ostensibly aimed at kids, it explores the dangers of getting everything you've ever wanted when it isn't real. A perfect simulated utopia versus this flawed world we find ourselves in is an interesting debate that has been explored many times over the years. I'm also nearly always a fan of heroes working together as a team, especially when a weaker hero helps save a stronger one. A few good punches from Mongol and Batman is dead, but he fights to save Superman anyway. Wonder Woman gets a bit shortchanged this episode as she's dealt the undesirable role of distraction and punching bag until Batman can free Superman. At least she gets to save Batman, which was nice. Perhaps my biggest complaints about the episode are pacing and closure. Regarding pacing, it feels like we get too much screen time of Batman and Wonder Woman trying to beat up a nearly indestructible foe. Within Clark's simulation, I don't feel like they laid the groundwork well enough, so when Clark gives his speech to his simulated son, it just comes across as a huge logical leap, and that there wasn't enough clues to tip him off. The only ramifications we see from these shattered simulations is Superman being ticked and wailing on Mongol. I think it would have helped to have a speech at the end of the episode. Batman and or Wonder Woman giving Superman something to be hopeful in again. Batman also could use some support, having just faced the pain of being yanked out of his dream life to bitter reality. It could go something like this. Superman is distraught and says that he's lost everything. Wonder Woman walks over and puts her hand on his shoulder and says, "Just think of how many people who haven't lost everything, thanks to you." It's tricky to thread the needle between heartfelt without being corny or just dismissing Superman's justifiable feelings. The point isn't that the speech magically makes him all better, but at least gives him hope and reason to keep moving forward. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more.